Hello and welcome to Empowered. I am Loren Spagnuolo, and today's guest is Paola Ardiles. She is the founder of Bridge for Health, and she's also a lecturer at Simon Fraser University in the Faculty of Sciences. And today we're going to be talking about health, and we're going to learn from Paola today about how health can be approached in a different manner. And so I'll leave it up to Paola to share, and I'll ask away. And thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate it. So I know you're the founder for Bridge for Health. Mm-hmm. Tell me how that, what prompted you to start this organization?
Well, thank you for asking. We actually started in my living room about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And it was a group of people, just ordinary people. Actually, there were about 20 women who showed up to this gathering that I called. And it had been people that I had worked in when I was working in the health system, mm-hmm. and people that I had collaborated or wanted to collaborate with. And I realized that there was a potential for us to come together and do something bigger. So there was a few people that were health professionals, but other people, were artists, yoga therapists, people from other areas that were interested in bringing a shift towards the way we think about health. So we started to articulate, what if we could actually help society think about health in a way that moves away from the healthcare system, which is already so burdened, as you know, mm-hmm. But actually start thinking about how we can actually create conditions to support people to be healthy in their communities, in their workplaces, in their schools. And that was the beginning of the network. And we started to meet throughout the years organically to figure out what we could actually do together. And we ended up holding, networking events, trying to see if this message resonated with people. And it was really interesting because people really get at their core that health is not something just at the individual or medical level, but that we all have a role to play in, shaping those healthy communities. And so we ended up getting a lot of support from people both here locally in Vancouver, but also across Canada. And then also through colleagues and partners that I had worked with internationally. And all of a sudden we found ourselves with a network that was local and global. And we realized that we needed to start figuring out a plan of how we're actually going to grow this, because we realized that there was a huge opportunity to actually not just shift the way that we're thinking about health, but also think about how we can engage other sectors in supporting us to do this. Because right now, the medical system, the people that are working in healthcare, they're already very overburdened, and the system is already, maxed out. And so how could we actually think about creating health outside of the healthcare system?
So when you say we're overburdened, why is that, and how are we overburdened?
Well, I think that it stems even the way that the healthcare systems were established around the world. They were actually created in response to people actually being sick and having to deal with the burden of illness in society. So how do we actually get people the support and the treatments to help them navigate through their illness? The issue is that actually doesn't support in keeping people healthy in the first place in order to actually avoid the medical system. And so what we have to do is actually take a step back and look at more upstream approaches that actually, it's about creating public policies that actually support people to stay healthy. So we already know that there's a lot of social factors that we have actually control of in our society around employment, for example, housing. They are really, really critical for people to stay healthy.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that are working on these areas already, but the issue with that brought us together is that we felt that we wanted to actually help people think about health in a different way so that we could all see that we all have a role and that we also have a role in a responsibility in our own workplaces as well. So we really wanted to support people in that kind of transformation about health not being just medical and not just being at the individual level, but that we can support each other. And that's sort of what evolved. Bridge for Health now is a community that of people that we're supporting each other through our own challenges, but also we're trying to come up with strategies and innovation in other sectors that can also help people create those conditions, for example, in the workplace.
So it really sounds like it's a change in consciousness.
It is. Most of us are coming from a perspective that, that illness is something that we obviously have to combat and treat, and there's a lot of people in the world already, doing that. But we're coming from the perspective of like, well, what do we actually need to do to keep people healthy, so that they don't actually have to even enter the system. And there's a lot of people in my field in public health that are working towards those goals and working to support, municipalities and governments around how do we address the public policy perspective. However, what that does sometimes, ordinary citizens often feel, isolated from those efforts, because there's, public policies that are happening at a government level. So how do I play a part here? What is my role? And that's what has happened in terms of the gathering of people that have come together around this collective. So much so that we realized that we couldn't continue working as volunteers. We had already been launching events, working in partnership with the Burnaby Public Library to do community talks around this issue. We were even engaged in some research projects with youth around developing their leadership skills so that they could actually take this message forward in their communities. And one of the things that was really interesting is that we asked the youth to consider how voting is good for your health. And their first, when we first asked them, what makes up your health, they would talk about, the things that we usually hear in the media about healthy eating, making sure that you're, being active, you're taking care of your body. But we shifted that conversation so that they were actually talking about, well, voting is actually good for me because I'm going to be choosing people that are actually going to create those policies that are impacting my health. But it's also about what my role as a youth leader in my community. So how can I influence other people in shifting to this perspective? And that was just one of the things that we ended up doing throughout these 4 years. And so what ended up happening after 4 years of working, as volunteers, is that we realized that we actually needed to shift to a social enterprise model where we could actually start generating some revenue to start supporting this, because we felt that there was a lot of appetite, not just here in Canada, but abroad. And that's where we ended up coming up with the idea, after a lot of research and a lot of investigation, that we actually wanted to become a cooperative association. And I think the distinction for that is that cooperatives are really supporting empowerment, because everybody has a vote, everybody has a say in how we're shaping the organization. And Bridge for Health is a very flat organization. So right now I'm the co-founder of the co-op, the Bridge for Health co-op, but we're actually 4 women who actually founded the co-op. And I think that what we bring that is different than other organizations is that everybody has the ability to actually choose what kind of role they want to have in Bridge for Health. So the members that are participating get to choose, this is how I want to be in this organization, and actually start building their own capacities and their own leadership to create that role for themselves. And what this allows us to do is to actually share the power in the organization, so it's more distributive, and actually build a more of a collective vision, which I think is really missing in the mainstream. And we are being led by a group of women, very strong women, and a lot of young women too, which I'm really encouraged by. Right.
Yeah. It sounds overwhelming, when you really think about it, but yet I'm not trying to deter from your cause or to, I think it's amazing that you've taken on this feat, because it's so important, particularly today. And that, as you know, that I'm currently in the healthcare, being in the healthcare system, and I find that it is challenging because it is individual. You can feel it when you're walking into the buildings. It's that. And I also think it's very powerful that women are actually leading the way right now to change. And that it's sort of in keeping of what's going on in the world.
Well, yeah, I think that one of the things that we are really conscious of is that there's a lot of new types of businesses and organizations that are being led by women that have a really firm sort of social purpose to them, right? And I'm not saying that men aren't doing this too.
Sure.
But I think that the collaborative nature of Bridge for Health, the interdisciplinary nature, we're a place where people actually can come and share ideas. And I think that that's where the thinking has evolved now to you know, our focus today is really on bringing these strategies and social innovation into the workplace. So collectively, you know, over the years, we've been working on how do we actually bring this type of thinking to the workplace, where we know that a lot of the programs that are offered are, you know, these wellness programs, as you probably have experienced yourself, you know, and through that different employers offer. They're still very much at the individual level, and they're still very much at the let's prevent the disease versus how do we actually think about the workplace from the perspective of the whole system, not just the individual in the system.
Yes.
And think about, so how can we design our workplaces so that we create, you know, both the social and the physical environment that actually promotes health and well-being versus thinking of it reactively, you know, in terms of like, okay, now there's a whole bunch of people that are sick, what are we going to do to support them? So we are now supporting businesses in taking this thinking and going through an approach where they're actually being able to identify, you know, what are some of the root causes that are, you know, where people are finding some challenges around health and well-being in the workplace. And then taking them through a process where they themselves are participating in the solutions. Because that's, I think, the real value of participatory approaches is that when you bring people together that have diverse perspectives and that they can share their ideas, not feel like they're being judged, you know, not feeling like, oh my God, like this person is going to make me wrong, you know, but really truly be able to share and say, hey, you know, I've got something valuable here to share with you that, you know, is from my own experience. And I think that when people are brought together in a room like that, and you can have different levels of the organization being represented, that's, I think, where is the real place for innovation. Because normally, you know, and I've talked to probably hundreds of people that are working in, you know, kind of HR positions, and they tell me, you know, Paola, it's impossible to fix the problem because the prevalence of illness is getting higher and higher, right? And so how do we can't continue to be reactive. We have to do something different. And the solutions that we have right now are treating the symptoms, but they're not getting at the root cause, right? And so people are saying a lot of times that what's out there is really providing, you know, Band-Aid solutions, and we need something different. We need a different approach.
Right. Thank you. We're going to be taking a break, and I'm with Paola Ardiles today, and we log on to her website, bridgeforhealth.org, correct? And you'll learn a lot about her organization, and we'll continue to learn more with Paola. Be back in a few minutes.